Welcome to Fight News Now Extra. My name is John Pollock with John Ramdeen and Robin Black coming by to chat today's news as Uriah Hall will step in as a replacement. The UFC's Tough 22 finale has been announced, as has a main event for the show, and the UFC prepares for a stadium event in Australia. It was confirmed on Wednesday that the UFC will run Etihad Stadium in Melbourne, Australia on November 15th and will have an opportunity to break the promotion's attendance record set at UFC 129 in Toronto at the Rogers Centre. On top of the Robbie Lawler versus Carlos Condit and Antonio Silva versus Mark Hunt fights already announced, the promotion has also added a middleweight bout pitting Michael Bisping against Robert Whittaker as Bisping looks to extend his win streak to 3, while Whittaker has won his last 3 fights. The next domestic season of The Ultimate Fighter is about to kick off in a few weeks with coaches Conor McGregor and Uriah Faber. The finale card has been announced for Friday, December the 11th in Las Vegas on the night before UFC 194, featuring Jose Aldo and Conor McGregor. The tough finale will feature a lightweight bout pitting Joe Lauzon and Evan Dunham together, as well as a welterweight bout between Mike Pierce and Ryan LaFleur. And Juan Carnero is off of the September 27th UFC card in Japan, where he was to fight Gegard Mousasi. MMAfighting.com reported an elbow injury that Carnero was dealing with, despite having surgery on the elbow, but experiencing problems due to a loose piece of bone. Uriah Hall is going to step in to replace Carnero and meet Mousasi at the Saitama Super Arena after winning quickly earlier this month against Olawale Bamboshe in Nashville. This Sunday night, we are live at 6 p.m. Eastern Time for a 1-hour preview show getting you set for all of the fights coming your way from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. At 7 Eastern, keep it on Fight Network as we will present the 4 undercard fights, including Frankie Perez and Sam Stout in lightweight action. All right, here with John Ramdeen and Robin Black. Since we last spoke, the UFC has now confirmed that they are going to be running Etihad Stadium in Melbourne, Australia. This will be an opportunity to set an attendance record for the promotion. And typically, when it comes to the talk of stadium shows, they have happened in the past, but pretty infrequently. They are typically very conservative when it comes to the venues they're running. Are you surprised they're going this direction, running a stadium in Australia?
I'm not surprised, because you just look at your markets, and it seems that Australia is one of those hot markets. And if
especially
it's hot,
Melbourne.
Exactly. So you just go with it. We were talking about some of the fights, though. Michael Bisping versus Robert Whittaker, and I like Robert Whittaker. Guy's very talented.
And he's Australian.
And he's Australian, I get that. But it seems that Michael Bisping should be facing marquee names, like Lyoto Machida comes to mind. I know Bisping called out the champion, Chris Weidman, and I think he said he'd like a rematch with Luke Rockhold. But I think a fight with Lyoto Machida makes more sense. You've got the star power of former champion, and Michael Bisping, it doesn't matter if he's champion or not. The guy always brings interest, but I think it's a very bizarre fight.
Yeah, I'm a big Michael Bisping fan.
Yeah,
That's
me too.
well documented. So are you. One other thing, as stadiums go, people in this room have been to a stadium show at the, what do we call that stadium here in Toronto now?
The Sky Dome.
Sky Dome.
The Sky Center.
We call it the Sky Dome. And it was awesome. It was crazy awesome.
However,
yeah.
It was awesome for a lot of people. I know a lot of fans that went to the event. You know, it was the first time the UFC came to Ontario.
It was so big they credentialed us.
Well, yeah, exactly. But there were people up in the top of the Rogers Centre that said, you know what, we spent so much money on tickets, and we found ourselves looking at the screen the whole time. I was glad that I went, but I don't know if I would ever go again.
Yeah, it's different for sure. I mean, when you are high up, and we were high up, that's where the press was, there's lasers and spotlights and giant screens, and it's a stadium. And when George St-Pierre walked out and there was 60,000 people, it was crazy. The thing with Robert Whittaker, this fight makes no sense unless it makes total sense and he wins. Because if he wins, he has beaten a marquee name, a true star in fighting, and he's done it in Australia in front of 70,000 Australians. If that can happen, then it makes total sense.
It makes, having someone like Robert Whittaker there as well, and just the amount of interest there is going to be in a Robert Whittaker on that size of a scale. I mean, you go back to George St-Pierre, they were selling George St-Pierre headbands outside of the Rogers Centre that night. I think the guy who sold those made a killing that night.
I think
lots of revenue to be made when you're talking about thousands and thousands of people all congregating to watch a UFC card. But it is headlined by, you do get a championship fight. Antonio Silva, Mark Hunt is confirmed. To me, the biggest draw in all of it is it's the first show in Melbourne. This is a part of the country in the state of Victoria that is starving. They didn't think they were going to get the UFC until the laws had to be changed. So I think it's very, very similar to how Toronto received the UFC for the first time at the Rogers Centre. And Tom Wright playing a pivotal role in both parts of the world.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. You just go, again, where the markets are hot. And you mentioned that Melbourne starving for mixed martial arts. So will they be able to have a second stadium show? I don't know. I think the fans are obviously, they're interested in seeing a big show like that. You have local stars on the card, like at the Rogers Centre, where they had George St-Pierre from nearby Quebec and Mark Hominick in the co-main event from nearby London. So I think that it depends on the
after the initial show, the big show.
That's it.
It's very contingent on the right fight and everything. They've never gone back to the Rogers Centre.
Right.
It's always been the Air Canada Centre, and it's been quite a few years since they've gone there.
However, if George St-Pierre decided to come back, and it comes down to the right matchmaking, George St-Pierre on the card, as well as some other big names, because that Rogers Centre show, Jake Shields, George St-Pierre, Mark Hominick, and Jose Aldo, and Randy Couture was on the card. Mike, what do you call it?
Lyoto Machida. Maybe he'll get Michael Bisping.
Of
You'll
course.
get your fight.
There were so many big names. Ben Henderson was on the card. So you have to load the event if you want to have people of that magnitude.
When the UFC goes somewhere for the first time, it's a big deal. There's a lot of people who are big fans. A lot of people are medium-sized fans. A lot of people are like, that UFC, that thing's cool. I used to like Tito Ortiz, and they show up too. And speaking of which, we're going to Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. Randy and I are leaving today. It's the UFC there for the first time.
It's not a stadium.
It's not a stadium, but it's only a couple 100,000 people. I like Saskatoon. There's some good Mexican breakfast I'm going to take you at Amigos, my friend. But Saskatoon's a good town. Only a couple 100,000 people, but they may do 10, 12,000. They may do more in the arena there. Max Holloway against Oliveira.
Awesome.
Great fight. A lot of great Canadians. So this is not a stadium in Melbourne, but it's an arena in Saskatoon, and we're excited to go.
Who do you guys like in that fight between Max Holloway and Charles Oliveira?
I think we're both agreeing it's Max Holloway. I think I've been watching this kid for a long time. I think he doesn't get rattled easily. He has real confidence going in there. Awesome stand-up, awesome ground. And again, it's the confidence and his mentality. It seems that it doesn't matter who's standing across the cage from him. He is there to destroy you. And apparently everybody believes that this guy just loves getting in there and fighting and throwing down. This is what he's meant to do.
I'm shooting a breakdown right after this. We'll put it up on our YouTube page. It's on Max Holloway. To prepare, I watched all his last 6-7 fights. He gets better every single time, and he's going to be even better Sunday.
All right, they are off to Saskatoon, and tune in Sunday night, 6 Eastern for our preview show. They will be all over that, and then the prelims from Saskatoon coming up Sunday night at 7 Eastern. More Fight News Now Extra coming up now.